Before we go on to 4b, though, let's think about what we're doing here more conceptually. So let's start with the sine of 10. What are we talking about here? Well, this is not in degrees, so this must mean that the expression means the sine of 10 radians. Well, that's a little odd, but not really. What does it mean to take the sine of 10 radians? Well, let me start by saying that trigonometric functions are sometimes called angular functions or circular functions. And so let's think about what 10 radians would look like on a circle. And what angle, think about what this angle looks like. So here's the center of our circle. It's not a very good circle, but that's all right. So if we start here, one time around the circle is 2 pi radians, okay? So how many times around the circle is 10 radians? Well, that's 10 divided by 2 pi. And when I did that on a calculator, that turns out to be about 1.6 times around the circle. So a little bit more than 1.5. So you go around the circle one time, and then another half of a cycle, and then a little bit more is down here somewhere. So now we have our angle. This and we have our angle, and it's alpha. I'm going to call it alpha because now we're not really thinking in terms of 10 radians. We're just thinking about this much smaller angle, but it's the difference between 3 pi would be here. That would be 3 pi times around the circle, and here's 10. So I don't know, it's just some angle. Alpha doesn't matter for our purposes. You could figure it out. But this is now we're back to trigonometry, because now you can draw a triangle. In fact, you can draw a right triangle. It looks like this, and this is your hypotenuse, and this is the opposite side. So now we're back in terms of trigonometric functions. The sine is just the ratio of the opposite over the hypotenuse. And so the domain of the sine function is negative infinity to infinity. But the range is simply -1 to 1, right? It's going to be some ratio in that range. And we don't need to know what it is, but you can see why a sine function has to do with triangles, right triangles in the Pythagorean theorem, but you can also think of them as functions related to angles or circles. Okay, so last point is simply this expression, sine of 10, gives you some number between -1 and 1, and then we're going to take the arc sine of that. So we're starting now with a ratio, a number between -1 and 1, and when you take the arc sine, again, so this now becomes the domain of the arc sine function. You can't take the arc sine of 3, for example. Doesn't make any sense. This brings you back to an angle. In fact, in this case, it brings you back to angle alpha. But equivalently, it brings you back to 10. So there you have it.